If you want to improve your aim and movement skills, then you come to the right place. Today's topic is all about how to properly work on movement in aim trainers specifically for FPS games. When it comes to improving your aim in FPS games, using aim trainers can be actually incredibly helpful. Aim trainers are software programs that simulate scenarios you might find happen often in-game and allow you to practice your aim in a much more controlled environment. In an aim trainer, you can adjust the difficulty and movement patterns of each scenario to give you a much more diverse experience attacking different types of movement. Segment 1. One technique that I've been really using to improve my aim is to do extremely long strafes. This involves moving in one direction, left or right, while keeping your crosshair on the target for an extended period. Now, long strafes actually help you develop your tracking skills because they don't require you to counter their movement with your own. Instead, purely rely on aim, which is essential for hitting those movement targets in-game. When doing long strafes in an aim trainer, it's important to pay attention to your movements and make sure you're not overcompensating. Overcompensating means that you're moving your character too much, strafing far too often, which can cause you to miss your target. Instead, try to do long controlled movements to keep that crosshair glued on the target. Segment 2. Mirroring versus anti-mirroring. When you're playing an FPS game, it's important to be able to react to your opponent's movements and adjust your aim accordingly. There are two common techniques for doing this, either mirroring and anti-mirroring. Mirroring is when you move in the same direction as your opponent. For example, if your opponent moves left, you also move left. This technique can be useful because it allows you to keep your opponent in the line of sight and maintain a steady aim. However, it can also make you way more predictable and easier to hit. That's when anti-mirroring comes into play. That is when you move in the opposite direction of your opponent. For example, if your opponent moves left, you move right. This technique can be more difficult to master than mirroring, but can also be more effective because it makes you harder to hit and can throw off your opponent's aim. It's important to note that both mirroring and anti-mirroring actually have their drawbacks. If you rely too heavily on these techniques, you might find yourself focusing more on dodging bullets than hitting your shots. To avoid this, it's important to realize what your game requires compared to how you actually move. Then practice both techniques in an aim trainer and work on both your aim and movement combined. Segment 3. Problems. While mirroring and anti-mirroring can be useful techniques for reacting to your opponent's movement, they can also work against you if you rely on them too much. One problem with these techniques is that they make you more predictable and easier to hit. If your opponent knows that you always move in a certain way, they can use that to their advantage and anticipate your easier movements. Another problem with mirroring and anti-mirroring is that they distract you from your primary goal, which is to hit your shots, right? If you're constantly focused on dodging the bullets, spamming AD all the time, you can throw off your own aim and actually become an easier target to hit, since AD spam always puts you back in the original position you were at. Combine this with the fact that AD spam always feels like you're moving a lot when in reality you're almost stationary to hit. You may not be able to aim as effectively as you would if you were focused purely on long strafes. That is why it's important to practice movement and not rely too heavily on either technique. Conclusion. Improving your aim and movement skills in FPS games takes knowledge of what game you're attacking and how your movement looks for your enemy. By using an aim trainer and focusing on techniques like long strafes instead of anti-mirroring or mirroring, you can develop your skills and become more effective. Remember to take your time and focus on the fundamentals, and you'll be on your way to becoming a monster in no time. That's it for today's video on aim trainers and how to properly work on movement in aim trainers for these FPS games. Remember to focus on doing extremely long strafes to improve your aim and avoid relying too heavily on mirroring and anti-mirroring techniques. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more content like this one.